Many people don't know they exist, even Americans at times. So I'd explain it that these sites overseas are memorials to the sacrifice that American service members made outside of the United States in a cause to propel or ensure that an ally retained its liberty and its freedoms. And these sites are here to commemorate those actions throughout Europe, throughout North Africa, and that's what these sites are. That's what they represent. They represent the sacrifice America made to its allies in order that they retain their liberty. What happened here, and the reason that we're here, this site was located, is this cemetery commemorates the Normandy campaign. For the United States Army, the Normandy campaign starts on the 6th of June and ends with the liberation of Paris on the 25th of August, 1944. So those service members who died during that campaign on the fields of combat would be buried here in Normandy. I think for any visitor, regardless of where he's from, it can be overwhelming because the site is set up to be overwhelming. That is to say, it's a very gentle, beautiful entry. You almost feel like you're in a park. Beautiful, everything is trimmed, the trees are pretty. And you turn around the bend and you see the Omaha Beach. It's gorgeous. The Omaha Beach, where initially before the occupation by the Bravery were called the Golden Beaches of France. They're probably the most beautiful beaches of France, is right here. You see that, and then you go a little further and you see the thousands of crosses, and there's a real shift in your in what you feel. It's not sadness, but it is overwhelming, and it was we call that interpretive threshold. That is, you come through like a curtain, and now your mind is really focused on why are these men here? Why are they laid out perfectly in rows? Why are they intermingled? And so it's a feeling of being overwhelmed. For an American, it's also a feeling of pride. For a foreigner, it's a feeling of a little more respect for America when you come around the corner and say they really go out of their way to recognize the sacrifice of their service members. But I think it's not a sad place. I don't think visitors get the feeling it's a sad place, but it is definitely a place made to make you think of what real sacrifice means, and that there's a cost to freedom. People have been paying it for a long time, long before America even existed. And though the cost is very heavy, it's necessary. Anytime you meet a veteran, it's a humble experience, because they almost get offended if you tell them they're a hero. And almost all of them will tell you, I'm no hero. I was in an army of millions of other men. I came on a boat with men. I was no braver. I was not a better shot. We were all in the same situation. But I met a veteran who had done this, came in on the second wave here in Normandy. He was a member of the 16th Infantry Regiment. Name was Frank Moore. And Frank explained to me the day of the landing here, he came in on the second wave. He was the last man on the left-hand side of his boat. And he told us it was the worst place to be because that's where the diesel exhaust was. And there are 34 men in front of Frank, and they're all vomiting because it's very rough. And he says the vomit hits the sea spray, makes its way back. So he said, then I began to vomit. I filled up my vomit bag. It took 2.5 hours. People think that from coming from the big boats to here took 15 minutes, like Saving Private Ryan. That's not the case. It took 2.5 hours. These men were standing up the entire time, chest to shoulder. But Frank told me that they had been given orders by their officers not to throw themselves over the side of the boat because they would drown. They were carrying 75-pound packs. And most of the boats didn't hit the sand. They hit a sandbar, which Normandy's full of. The gate opens, men run out and fall into 8 to 12 feet of water. Their 75-pound pack now weighs 125. They're being shot at. There's no place to hide. Frank said that only 2 people from his entire boat survived the landing. Frank fought for 8 more weeks, and after 8 weeks, he's the only remaining member of his initial 132-man company. The others have been wounded, prisoners of war, killed, most wounded. The command decided to do something for Frank Moore. They said, this young kid's already seen enough. He's seen 8 weeks of the landing and fighting through the hedgerows. So they send him to a training division here in western France. He spent several months training new divisions arriving. Then he's put into a division himself, and it's one of the divisions that's surrounded at the Battle of the Bulge. Frank tells me that in the Belgium area in December they were repulsing their 6th attack of the morning. They've been attacked 6 times in one morning. And that his rifle misfired. And he explained immediate action on an M1 Garand like he was a drill instructor from the Marine Corps. He hasn't forgotten anything in 60 years. He knows, he went through every single step. He said that didn't work. So he said at that point he knew he had to completely disassemble a weapon in the middle of a firefight. So he said, I took my glove off, and he's telling me the story, and he says, I took my glove off, and he put his hand up, and he said, my trigger finger had been shot off. That's why my gun wasn't working. He said, I hadn't felt my hands or fingers for 3 days. And Frank was here because after the war he became one of America's top fly fisherman guides in the state of Oregon. And when I met Frank, he was 90 years old. He was still working every day as a guide, and he was here to fish the streams that he had fought through. That's why Frank was here. But veterans have all kinds, and for a lot of veterans, you've got to drag these stories out of them. We see that a lot. We have families who tell us that my father's never spoken about this war till he got here. He got here, he saw, and he says he told us stuff today we've never heard, never. These men tended to go home and just go back to work because it involved so many of them that they felt they were all in the same boat, and they just returned to America. And not only did this generation help win a war, this generation really changed America. We became super rich after World War II because these men went to work and they built cars, they built houses, they built communities. That's why I think they're the best generation. But that was a moving story because it's a story of, I can't even believe, can't even understand what Frank fought through. And to see him, when I saw him, he's holding his wife's hand like they were high school sweethearts. It was his wife forever. And just how humble he was, and how grateful he was, and how self-serving he was. It was just great. But I've talked to lots of veterans, and they never, and I'll never pass up that opportunity. I've learned something every day. I've learned to be a better person myself, just by the impression these veterans have left on me.
This is our little link right here, because we have next to us a statue of Henry, yes. And this is one of those. Y bueno, pues vamos a la playa. No quiere ir arriba.
I'd say thank you for your service. Thank you for what you did for America. Thank you for making America the great country that it was. I'm sorry it's not the great country now. It seems to be, we tend to throw rocks at each other in America today. I think a lot of these veterans would be disappointed. I don't know where we went. I have an idea, a personal idea of where I think we went wrong. But the truth of the matter is, as much and many Americans get offended when I say this, but America's fought lots of wars. The last one we won was this one. This is the last war we won. And I was a soldier, and I can tell you, this is truly the last war we won was this one. Every war after that we've tied, we hope, we think, we tell ourselves, or we've lost. And so the best financed army in the world, with all its great generals, when I see a general today, I had a couple generals this morning. And you know, I was a 3-star general. I fought here, and the back of my mouth, I really want to say, but you didn't win. You didn't. We haven't won a war since then. That's the last war we fought. And we've got to start asking ourselves, why is that? I can guarantee you, on the 6th of June, the guy next to him didn't care if the guy next to him was a Republican or a Democrat. Most of them weren't affiliated to political parties to begin with. I think what's going on in the world today is the world has become tribal. That's to say, in America, if your neighbors are a Democrat, you're a Republican, you're automatically, there's a need to not like him. I think it's foolish. I think at the end of the day, titles of political parties solve nothing. We've probably given them too much importance. I think if we gave them less importance and just asked them to do their job on a daily basis and held them accountable, because in America today, we've been investigations for 7 to 8 years. Well, we're really good at that. The problem is you use an excuse to not pass a budget, which we're unable to do and we're required by law to do. So I think beyond all that, these are cyclic historically, and we're going to get over it. I wish it didn't take so long, but for us, the VIPs are not Republicans, Democrats, presidents, senators, congressmen, governors. They're private first classes. They're 4-star generals. Those are the VIPs. And when we welcome, and we do a lot, congressional delegations, presidents, we attack our job is that they're not the VIPs. They're here to visit the VIPs. And that way you keep a very level head and you don't forget what you're here to do, which is to let those people know what the VIPs were capable of under much harder conditions than staying in offices all day and being on the internet. So we're apolitical. We don't get involved in politics, but we could most certainly learn something from the generation. They're called the best generation in America. As a young soldier myself, and I spent 23 years in the service, I often ask myself, before I came here, well, what makes their generation any better than mine? I went to war 3 times. I went to 3 deployments. It only took me a little while being here finding out I couldn't do this. There's no way I could do this. That wasn't, so they were the best generation. They weren't only the best generation militarily. I think they were honest people. They were hardworking. Most of them are products of a depression. Our liberties were still young compared to the rest of Europe. Today we're still young. I mean, there are houses in the village older than my country. And so I think they have a lot to teach us if we're willing to listen. That to really get things done, it requires sacrifice, maybe not death. Maybe we need to work a little harder. Maybe we need to complain a little less. maybe we need to stop thinking of ourselves individually, because that's a problem in America now. An 18-year-old gets out of high school, he wants to design an app and become a millionaire, and when you tell him that's really not how it works, you got to push a lawnmower maybe a little bit. They don't understand. So, but I think in the long run that'll all come out in the wash. It will. The world has a way of righting itself, whether we want to or not, and so we don't get too involved in politics here. Just to say that when we greet senators and congressmen and governors, and most of them are very good people, we don't attack our job as we don't attack our job as that we're here to please them. We're here to educate them. This is what these guys did. And this is how they did it. This is the cost. And hopefully they get back on that bus and think, maybe I ought to work a little harder. Maybe I ought to get results. And at the end of the day, I can go to bed and say, well, I did this today and I was successful. Not, I'm preparing for tomorrow's debate and the next day's debate and the next year's debate, because we're really good debaters. We're just not moving forward very well, very quick.